Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.
What I've said, and you know what I've done, and you know what we're doing, and you know what I know what you're doing.
And what you're doing is watching Talking with TalksALot, this variety talk show where my guests are definitely smarter than me, and you can tell. Joining me today is the wonderful Max Von Priestley, the MVP himself. Of course, the channel just got a whole lot more gorgeous, but that's enough homoeroticism for one morning. How you doing, bro?
I'm good, man. Yeah, thank you again for having me on. I love that intro. That is so rad. And yeah, I would say that the only reason is just because of my statues. They're much prettier than I am. So don't.
I do love that Superman statue back there, bro.
Right?
Oh my god,
it's such a centerpiece. I'm very glad to have grabbed it. But Tugs from the Geeks and Gamers crew always. She always claims that she's going to come and steal it, but I think the thing is bigger than she is, so I don't know how that's really going to work.
Well, but, she knows a couple big guys that could maybe carry it out for her.
That's true. Actually, she's got some bodyguards, but yeah, man. So it's a pleasure to be on, and you've had a plethora of incredible channels come on your show.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to.
I'm glad to add to the roster of awesome people that have been on this TalksALot channel, and I hope this is an engaging conversation. As I said before, I am a normie when it comes to comic books, so when we start talking about that, excuse my blank expressions. Real quick, jump over to the chat. Vince Womack, it's always good to see you, sir. I'm glad you could be here. 32 flavors of Nick Weiser. Get some early morning pizza there, sir. Or some afternoon pizza. Yeah. And then, of course, Blair to Blair. Always good to see you, sir. And I'm sure we'll have more people join as we go. But let's get into it, shall we? So, oh my gosh. And then Lasso Truth just popped in. Hi, Lasso. I'm happy you could be here. She's the best person in the entire community. And I'm not saying that just because she's the president of my fan club. But, she's an awesome lady.
That avatar speaks for itself.
Oh, yes, it
does. That is gorgeous. So that's so rad.
Absolutely. So when it comes to comic books, what would you say your favorite comic book character is? Like, if you could choose one, like, who would you go with?
Yeah, for sure, man. The quintessential, and we were talking about him earlier.
Sorry to interrupt. Hold on. That 70s rock fan.
What's going on, dude? Great to see you.
It's a pleasure to see you, sir. Glad you could make it. Anyway.
Hey, that was a better accent than he has.
Well, he's been living in Canada for a while, so you can't blame him.
That's what it is, for sure. But yeah, I would say the kind of the stone that holds it all together is Superman. My favorite character, though, would probably be Wolverine, just because of his complexity. There's so many different layers. Like, as you read the characters, you get more into his story, into his, like, what drives him, into his friendships with other, like, Marvel characters. He's got so much depth to him that's probably one of my favorite ones.
Nice.
But Superman, for me, is, like, always going to be top, just because of the hope, the love, the passion that he represents is just, like, overarching what you want, like, from a superhero.
Yes.
So
absolutely. I agree with you 100%. Superman is an amazing character. If we hadn't had his archetype to drive the hero genre, we probably wouldn't be able to define what, values we actually hold as people. And I know that's saying a lot, but Superman embodies truth, justice, in the American way, no matter how they change his catchphrase. As far as the Wolverine thing goes, I love Wolverine as a character, but, when you look at his track record, he's kind of a shitty parent. You know, he kills like all of
100%.
his kids.
100%. Not only is he kind of a shitty parent, he's kind of just a shitty person. Like he's
You're
just kind of
right.
like even his relationships and friendships, like his friends continually try and reach out to him and they try and help him. And he's always like, hey, I'm a one man show. Leave me alone. I'm going to do whatever I want. I'm going to, get away from me, bub. I'm the best at what I do. I don't need your
Yeah.
help. He's very much on his own and to his detriment. You know, he's humbled plenty of times where
Oh yeah.
the X-Men have had to come and save him or at least be there for him during a difficult time. But I think it speaks to the fact that he has had so much struggle. He's had so much done to him in his life, whether it's living through centuries, because
That's
he
got to be
doesn't
hell.
age. Yeah. I mean, living through the Civil War, living through World War One, World War Two, and being in all of those, um, participating in all of those, seeing the different friends of his die over the ages, and then being used as a weapon himself in the Weapon X series. Like he has gone through absolute hell and continues to come back time and time again. So he is kind of a terrible person to some of his friends. But it's only because I think he's had so much done to him that he's just so hardened and bitter,
Yeah. Well, see, Superman is the embodiment, as Lasso Truth points out, of what a hero should be. And Wolverine, in my opinion, would be the embodiment of what it would be like to still be human, but forced into these situations. Because, Wolverine does go through a lot of shit. And when you live for centuries, you cannot help but feel alone in your pursuits. And that's where, like, I'm a one-man show comes in. But Wolverine also shows that heroes are still human. Even if they're mutants, they're still human. They have to deal with the same shit we do on a different level sometimes, but they still have to put up with the same emotions. They still have to put up with the same bullshit. Like, how many times do you think Wolverine would have just liked to be the bad guy? I mean, realistically, it's not in his moral fiber to be the bad guy, but I bet you there's times where he's all like, screw it. Where's Magneto? Let's go do this. Like,
Absolutely. Yeah, you couldn't be more right because it speaks to his grit, his fortitude to come back every single time and still do the right thing.
yep.
Now, granted, he's probably killing a lot of bad guys. He's not this Batman as kind of like, oh, I don't kill. He's
Yeah.
like, oh no, I'm gonna kill you. We'll be
Well-
clear about that, buddy. So
That was always my the leg up that Marvel heroes, in my opinion, had on DC. Is DC sure focused on the value of human life, and they showed you that there are ways to deal with these things without killing. The whole, if you kill a killer, the amount of killers in the world stays the same. But Marvel goes by statistics based thing, where if you kill 2 killers or 3 killers, it actually does statistically start to drop the number of killers in the world. But like, I've always been that way with, like, Batman, for instance. Everybody knows that if Batman just killed the Joker, he would have a lot less problems in his life.
yeah.
But then you have to deal with the idea that Batman would be almost just like the Joker at that point,
Mhm.
in some ways. And, like, the dichotomy of superheroes and villains and stuff is forever going to be an amazing part of life, as long as they stop sticking their dick in it. But
That's a good way of putting it.
Everybody's got a favorite villain too. So who would you choose for that?
Another one that I've got right behind me, I think would be Venom.
Venom.
And I think there are people who would classify Venom as an anti-hero. When he was first created, Venom was like very much so a villain. And even
I remember that.
Yeah. And so when he was created and when we saw him in these Spider-Man comics, even McFarlane, when he was writing him, he was like, I didn't want Venom to be this kind of morally, okay guy. I wanted him to be terrifying and a really horrible person. So Venom started as straight up just a villain. So I do like that. I like both sides, honestly. I like him as a villain. I like him as an anti-hero. But if I had to choose like a villain, it would either be yeah, Venom or maybe Magneto.
Mm,
I love his design. Like
yeah,
his his cause. I think it's one of those heroes that or those villains that thinks that his cause is for the good, is for the
yeah.
better.
Hmm.
And so I think that there's a lot of psychological stuff that you can unravel there. But his design is just so cool, from the helmet to the cape to the master of magnetism. Like I
Yeah.
just love that whole thing. Um, so yeah, I'd probably
Well,
say those
yeah.
two.
I love Magneto in the fact that he shows the pendulum swing, if you will, of a person going through terrible shit and then practically perpetrating the same terrible shit for their own greater good. And that's that's something that a lot of people don't really want to think about these days. To get slightly political, you could use Musk as an example. If he buys Twitter, then there's a chance he could swing the pendulum too far. I doubt it, because he seems like a fairly level-headed guy, understands business, but he feels like he could be a Magneto type character, where these bad things happen, now I'm going to stop them by doing them. And you know that's just my most political thought for the day.
I think too, like Magneto never really has anyone to keep him in check. The only one that would be able to do so is Professor Xavier,
Hmm.
who's like his counterpart. So, like you said, it's kind of that pendulum swing of this is what would happen if we get someone who says rules for thee but not for me, you
Yep.
know.
Hmm.
And when you see that pendulum swing, and no one tests that, no one tries to counteract that and try and say no, this isn't right. You get a Magneto who's like this all powerful, almost dictator like type
Yep.
of leader. So yeah, man, he's a very strong villain within the X-Men universe, and just within the Marvel universe uh, alone. I always remember reading, when Magneto rips the adamantium skeleton from Wolverine's bones, and you just realize like how powerful this guy actually is, because you're just like, well, that was my favorite character, and now he's pretty much dead. Like,
Yeah.
so you really see his power, his strength, his tenacity, which makes those are all great things that make a villain.
Hell yeah.
Um, so, which is needed for a hero. I'm not saying the villains are good people, but they're
Right.
good when they are put up against a heroic force to
Yes.
kind of banter back and forth with.
Yes. Absolutely. Hello, brightest day. Good to see you,
What's up,
sir.
dude? Yeah.
So, and of course, there is Ryan Roger Affey here. He's a wonderful
Hey,
up
what's
and
up, man?
coming YouTuber. Go check that guy out. He does some great My Thoughts on videos, like
Yeah.
good content there. So again, not a big comic book guy, but what would you say is your favorite run in a comic series? Like, was there a specific storyline that just like sticks with you, or
Anything anything Silver Surfer. So like he has had I think the reason why Silver Surfer has done so well, and he's not super well known, he hasn't had a ton of movies or books
right?
or but I think the reason why Silver Surfer did so well was because Stan Lee was very protective of him. I don't want to say gatekeeping, but I guess you could kind of relate it to that. But Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, when they came up with this idea, technically, I believe Jack Kirby was the one who drew him and created him, and then Stan started to write him. Stan said, "I don't want anyone else touching Silver Surfer." So for the first like few decades of Silver Surfer stories, it was only written by Stan, and so those were just beautiful, like quintessential Marvel comic books, because no one else was getting their hands on them. It was
Yeah.
strictly Stan and what he wanted to do with the character. So those runs are just beautiful, in my opinion, and haunting in a way, because like there's this larger than life type of personality because he's in space. He's visiting different planets. He's with Galactus, which is like this godlike universal being. Whereas the other Marvel characters like Wolverine, Daredevil, Spider-Man, they're the heroes outside your window. You see them in the city and they're humans, you know?
Yeah.
And Silver Surfer is like this cosmic level being. So the stories are much grander, but they still have a lot of heart because
Yeah.
of the writing. So I would probably say that run of books has just always been. I can't think of a bad Silver Surfer run.
Okay.
So yeah,
All right. Sounds like I need to look for some Silver Surfer comic books.
for
So,
sure, dude.
who's your least favorite character that you've come across? Villain or hero?
Ooh, that's a great question, man. Oh, um, because
Mine is
if I,
Condiment King.
you know what? I don't even know. Is that DC or Marvel?
That's DC. He's a
I was gonna
Batman
say
villain.
that sounds like something DC would do. They have so many crazy characters. I love it.
I hated Calendar Man for a while, and then it actually got
Mm.
interesting. But Condiment King is dumb.
It's almost kind of like, when people hear like Polka Dot Man and they go,
Yeah.
"Oh, he's dumb," but then someone puts him in a live action movie and they're like, "Polka Dot Man is the coolest," you know. So I think it just kind of depends. But like yeah, like Condiment Man, I'd never even heard of that, but I love that. The worst one I think I've seen. It would probably have to be something within the past like decade. Um, I maybe Squirrel Girl,
Mm,
but then again, Squirrel Girl was actually created back, I want to say, in the 80s. If Nick Weiser, if you're still here, brother, I don't know if you know where or when Squirrel Girl was created, but she had a most recent run where she like killed the Marvel Universe or killed Thanos or something. I forget. And it was difficult to read because the character was just very quippy, and I don't think it was really meant for, you know, young to middle-aged men. So there's some pretty funny ones in the chat too, but
yeah.
yeah, I think I'd probably say that one. There aren't too many that I really, if I don't like the concept, I won't read it.
Right.
Especially now because books are $4 or $5.
Yeah.
And so I have to be very careful with, what I buy and what I want to read. It like has to be a must read. Whereas before books were $2. So I could pick one up and go, yeah, I'll try it out. And if I didn't like it, no worries. I could throw it back in the bin.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brightest Day.
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew it was a little bit earlier, but I didn't know if it was like, within the past decade or not.
Right.
So, yeah, I don't think necessarily some of these characters that have been made recently are bad. I think they've just been written poorly, or they've
Right.
been written to kind of take the mantle from someone else
Yeah.
and fill those shoes. And I think that's very difficult for writers and editors and publishers to keep writing that character because after a while it loses its originality.
Right.
And after a while you want to go back to the origin. You want to go back to, this is fine, but let's see Spider-Man again, or this is fine,
Right.
but let's see Mr. Fantastic or whoever it is. And so you kind of get these derivatives of characters that break off into different stories, and that's really difficult to write. So I think
Yeah.
even though they might be good characters, they don't have the correct talent to push, a well-written story.
Yeah. Well, we're seeing that in a lot of areas these days in entertainment is that they're sacrificing good writing to meet quotas, let's say,
Mm.
certain inclusion quotas. And like as you and several other people have pointed out, like some of these people writing these modern pieces of trash have actually done really good work in the past with
Yeah.
separate IPs, with like their own work and stuff like that, where it's really engaging. I'm terrible with names and can't call it to mind any examples, but we've seen this where we actually have good writers, but then they're restricted so much by the company that they're working for that
Mhm.
they either can't or won't achieve their full realization because the materials they would normally write don't fit what the company wants. And I saw that pop up with one of the Superman writers recently,
Mhm.
where they turned John Clark's son,
Mhm.
all kinds of fun. And then Hail Brahma Bull, glad you could make it, sir.
Hey, dude.
Hope to
Good to
see you
see you.
tonight. And then but so I actually have to question how much is the company's doing in ruining these characters, you know?
Yeah,
And
it's a good question.
yeah, because well, you got to think about it, because these writers got into this because they have a passion for what they do. Obviously, they got where they were because they had some modicum of talent. But then once you get into the actual books, you don't see that talent. You don't see that in the movies, you don't see that in the TV shows. They take cheap, like, Deus Ex Machina out, getting out of situations just because. They take, a lot of the time travel tropes that are going around right now, which is, what do you think of the time travel shit that's going on right now? Like, everybody wants to do the multiverses and time traveling, and I feel it's cheap. But how do you feel about it?
Yeah, it's very cheap and it's very lazy. It's at first when it was introduced, it was something that was really cool because for the first time ever, when DC did Crisis on Infinite Earths, there are a lot of people that say that's where DC started to get bad or when it started to get convoluted. But for the first time in a while, we had experienced like the resurgence of new characters and the death of old characters, but that was a wholly original idea, and so the multiverse seemed, expansive. Like it was this thing that was so new and it was exciting because now we could journey into all these different stories. But now it's become a cheap way of saying, "Hey, why did that happen?" Multiverse,
Yeah,
or like, "Hey, why did that don't think about it too much, multiverse."
yeah,
And so it's just always like a constant, what's that word? It's like a safety net, because
yeah.
they can always fall back onto the multiverse when it should be used sparingly as kind of
Very
this.
sparingly.
Yes, because it can get so convoluted and so heavy that, like, if you just if it can be bogged down and the
Yep.
story can get very convoluted and contrived. Um, but you had
Hello,
mentioned something
Sean.
earlier.
Glad you could come, sir. Sorry.
What's up, dude?
What's up?
Um, and yeah, you had mentioned something earlier that I thought was kind of interesting because you were talking about how there are creators that wrote fantastic stories in the 80s and 90s, and then they came back or they come back and they do some modern stories, and it's like, whoa, I don't even recognize the same
Yeah.
writer that I did before. What's going on with these creators, these writers? And it's I forget who did a video on it, but someone was talking about how yeah, absolutely, Vince. I agree. Um, there there was a great video that was done, and basically he was talking about how um we should anytime we talk about a creator in their past and say how great their past work was, it almost makes them more angry, which is unfortunate because they're like, we're trying to say, hey, we love these stories and we love you as a writer. All we want is that story that you produced earlier. And so
Yeah.
it almost gives them this like spiteful nature to go, oh, you liked my old work? I'm not going to give you my old work. I'm going to give you something totally new, something that you're
Yeah.
not going to like. And it's like, no, we're not trying to say we don't like your new stuff. It's just that we I don't know, it's this weird
We
dichotomy that
prefer the older way of doing things, where you tell
exactly.
the story, you put a little bit of politics in there to give it some spice if you have to, but everything,
Yeah.
it's about the story. It's about
Mhm.
the character development. It's about the struggle, and it's about escapism.
Yeah.
Those are all things that they've lost sight of.
And there is a great way of actually inputting a larger narrative into books, but it doesn't need to be at the forefront of any story. You can like there's no more subtlety within entertainment or comic
Nope.
books, because there is this. big push to have it be at the forefront, like I said. And um, it's almost, when a creator can do it as an underlying theme, it's almost more talent. Like you have to be more talented to write that into your story or your narrative, because then when somebody analyzes it for a deeper meaning, they can go, wow, this was actually a story about immigration, or this was a story about, global, whatever you want to say.
Yeah.
But at its core, this is just a good story. Like what it was meant to tell was a good story, but maybe underlying is a narrative that maybe the creator wanted to put in there. And that takes more talent,
Yeah.
because both people can enjoy it. You can have people who just want the escapism, and people who want to analyze it for more than what it is.
Yep.
And that really is like, those creators, those writers who are able to do that, um, have been doing this for a while, and they're very talented. Uh, but I don't think that that's what anyone wants to do anymore, unfortunately.
Right. So, crossover series. What would you
Mm.
say is your favorite crossover series in comic books?
Um,
Assuming you have
there,
one. I don't.
yeah, there's because there are plenty of like Avengers versus X-Men. There's one that's like the Justice League versus the Avengers. Um, Crossover, there was a really cool one that was really out there, that was Marvel and Top Cow. And Top Cow is I guess you could call it an indie publisher, but they created characters like the Darkness and Witchblade, which are like these really kind of out there, being like alien kind of
Yeah.
anti-heroes.
Okay.
And so Marvel did like a crossover with Top Cow stuff, and Top Cow was always known for like its imagery. It's like artists were always what Top Cow hired. So
Yeah.
you had the cool like writing and heroes of Marvel crossed over with like beautiful artwork of figures like Darkness and Witchblade. So that was kind of cool. Super random. Like,
Yeah.
most people would say, "Oh, Avengers versus X-Men," but for me, I think the crossover of those two was like peak '90s comic books that I would flip through as a kid. And
Yeah.
so I think, it's totally out there in comic book. People would be like, dude, you're insane. But I don't know, it's fun. So
Have you ever read The War of Light before?
no, actually. Is that
So
one that you've
The War of Light is a Green Lantern one. It's a crossover, if I remember correctly. I'm trying to just get my facts straight here. No, there was a crossover. I wanted to say it was War of Light, but I'm thinking of the wrong one. Where it was Green Lantern teams up with the Star Trek crew,
that's pretty cool.
and
That's
like
awesome.
there, I remember there was one panel where it was the Enterprise. I want to say it was Kirk's Enterprise, not Picard's, when it happened. But the Enterprise is flying through space, and there's Green Lantern and one of the Blue Lanterns flying right along with it. And that was just one of my favorite panels, like ever. Like now I got to find it and share that. So
The blue and well, just the Green Lantern Corps in general is, to me, and I might get some people upset about this, but that to me has always been a more interesting character and a more interesting story than Batman. And like I said, I'm gonna get a lot of heat for that, but I am so uh enthralled
the
with Green
Spectre.
Lantern, yes, and the spectrum of different rings and lanterns, and how other lantern like power batteries can like strengthen other lanterns. So like the blue lanterns, the lantern of hope can actually strengthen the green lanterns, the power of will. And so like they can use their forces together. Like, dude, it's so rad. Like the whole thing is just so brilliantly done, and created and drawn by what a lot of people assume is one of the like villains of the comic book industry, but Ethan Van Sciver, who I think that we've mentioned in the chat earlier, he was one of the co-creators of this whole Green Lantern Corps narrative.
Yeah. So, okay. Disclaimer before I start sharing this,
Mm,
it's Chris Pine's Captain Kirk that they put in
okay,
the comic books, but it's called the Spectrum War. And
that's cool.
it's like, as you see here, he's like talking with Kirk and stuff. And then, like, here you see, come on, give me a full fucking screen of that. Share this tab instead. So, as you can see here, like, you've got Bones with a blue lantern and
Yeah.
Uhura with pink. Like, it was super intriguing for me when I saw this comic book run because I had never thought of mixing Green Lantern with Star Trek.
Yeah.
And like Hal Jordan's my favorite superhero of all time. Just his will to push through fear, overcome
Mhm.
obstacles, his ability to maintain compassion while he's still um you know while he's pissed off or anything else that goes on, like the Blackest Night runs
Mhm.
where he got trapped by the red ring and then the blue ring attached itself to get it off, and then he was the composite lantern. Like, all of it's just so great. I love the composite lantern, twice as powerful as anything,
Oh yeah.
because will increases the power of hope, and just the messaging behind that. And now, Roger Ryder, is there a rainbow ring yet? No, but I remember a couple of years ago they introduced the Golden Lantern, whose emotional power was happiness. So I remember EVS going, so I could take his cookies and he would cry and be powerless. Just it's like, okay, that
There.
they're
Oh,
great.
sorry.
Like
Yeah.
every Lantern Corps has a purpose. At least
Mhm.
they used to, and of course now they're inventing shit, but it's always
There was a most no evil shall escape my sight, Nick. I
damn
love it,
right.
dude. Um yeah, it's there was a comic I read in the early, probably like 2018, 2019, somewhere around there, that introduced the Indigo
Hmm.
Lantern.
Yep,
Or not the
compassion.
Indigo. Yes, so
The
the
Indigo
Indigo is
tribe.
compassion.
Yep.
There was sorry, there was one that was it was in a more recent one. It was like the ultraviolet light. That's what it was. It was like
Okay.
light that you can't see, but that's still there. It
Okay.
was an interesting concept. I think John Stewart was the one who wielded the ring. It was in a Justice League book, but um, so yeah, there have been some more recent lanterns, and then we also got Jessica Cruz and Simon Baz, but they were Green Lanterns introduced to the Green Lantern Corps. Um, but yeah, I mean, your even the animated series of the Green Lantern animated series was so freaking good, and they had the the actor from Firefly. Um, oh, there it is. Yep,
Ultraviolet core.
that's what it is.
I like how these two, like right here, on the left of what looks like Sinestro, are just like your average like
Just
chunks. They're just like
so out of shape. Yeah. You would think that, like, yeah, what if you get a lantern ring, don't you think it would like transform you into something that's like very built and
well,
like
and
in shape?
that was one of the things that always got me about the Green Lantern stuff is like the Green Lanterns from Earth get the mask. They made the joke about it in that terrible Ryan Reynolds Green Lantern movie, but
Yeah.
like they just get the mask. And I always liked the ones that were like the Alpha Green Lanterns or whatever, where they had the full on face mask and like you couldn't actually see them and stuff. And I liked Kyle's mask more because it went down
Yeah.
over his nose and obstructed more of his face. Those just made more sense. But certain tropes, certain little things in comic books.
Yeah. And Kyle is actually I like him as a character. People everyone has their own favorite lantern. I think I agree with you though, Corey. Like I think Hal is by far one of the best DC characters.
He's
Um
underutilized too, honestly.
100%. And I think it's because people I don't know if it's because people don't write him or can't write him, or because they're too afraid of what happened with the Green Lantern film that we got. in the
Yeah.
mid 2000s or whatever. But yeah, no, it's it's unfortunate because if he were utilized properly, dude, that would be such an epic story to tell. Um, yeah, I think
Yeah, he's got the. You can see Brightest Day is
that's
actually
right.
wearing the best Green Lantern
Kyle.
mask.
Yeah,
It's
the Kyle Rayner one. It is pretty cool as opposed to like the little
yeah,
Robin-esque mask, I
yeah. Did
guess.
you ever see the original Green Lantern? He was a
Uh
magician.
oh,
Yeah, he was a
interesting.
magic user, and he wore a red cape, kind of like what was it? I want to say the Red Tornadoes cape, similar to that. And
Oh,
he
yes, yeah.
like dressed kind of like medieval, like hunt archer guy. He used magic all
Mhm.
the time, and like I'm glad they changed that, but that was kind of a cool character. Like,
It's funny to see where they've come. There was a great depiction of the first Green Lantern in there's a series called Kingdom Come, which is
mhm.
kind of like all of the heroes aged and older and now kind of retired from heroism, I guess. And you have that Green Lantern in like medieval armor. He's got like this suit of like plate mail, and then the
That's
big
sick,
green. Yeah, it was really cool. He's got a big old sword and everything. So,
dude.
yeah,
That's
it's a
that meant
yeah.
what is this called? I gotta
Type
look at.
in Kingdom Come Green Lantern. I think that should be the one that should come up.
Dude,
Um,
I gotta see
the
that. That's two of my
yeah, it's
favorite things that
the
have ever existed is Knights and the Green Lantern. So,
well,
oh,
yeah,
he
because
looks
you're
so badass. Look at that sword.
yeah,
Oh
dude,
my
it looks
gosh.
rad too, huh? And yeah, even Brightest Day says Alan Scott is my favorite. The Kingdom Come Alan Scott is my favorite version. Yeah, Brightest Day. It is like it's such an epic, character design, and of course it's drawn by Alex Ross, which is like absolutely beautiful. So that's another panel. If you go to the one that says Lantern into Cosmic Armor, that is the Alex Ross, plate armor version. But yeah, man, that Kingdom Come Green
Dude,
Lantern is really cool.
that is I can't believe I didn't even know about this. Like,
Yeah, man.
look at that.
Pretty rad.
If I was stupid rich, I'd have them make that armor for me. Like, oh man.
Dude, you could and if you ever went to like a Comic Con or something and wear that, I guarantee you would be the hit of the con. Because
Right?
yeah, it's a great character design
That's sick.
for sure.
I'm gonna have Kingdom Come. I'm gonna have to look for that because that's sick.
It's a great story too. It's pretty much an Elseworld story. It's not within continuity, I don't believe, but it's a great, like, you can find the trade paperback on Amazon, and it's one of my favorite DC stories, just because it's just a few issues, and it's like a compartmentalized story, so it doesn't really play into like the whole multiverse or anything. It is just the story of our heroes in an older stage in life, and it's beautifully drawn and well told. So it's
It looks
classic
like
for sure.
it. That's
Yeah,
that might be one I actually spend money on. So
there you
yeah.
go. Yeah, yeah, and that's what's
Speak
so great is like, oh, go ahead.
so when you started buying comics, how much were they?
Oh, well, I was 7 or 8 at the time, so I was buying them for like 25 cents
Right.
because I would go to the comic shop. I thought it was a toy store, and I would go in and noticing it's not a bunch of toys, I started looking at the cheapest thing in there. And sure enough, it was all the back issues, and it was
Yeah.
25 cents for a back issue. And I would just look through and I'd pull out cool covers. And as a 7 or 8 year old kid, you find Wolverine, you find Cable, X-Men, Superman, Green Lantern, like all the very flashy
Yeah.
built, masculine heroes. And I started just Punisher is another great one. I
Oh,
started just
dude.
pulling all those, and yeah.
I love Punisher as a character. Like Frank
Mhm.
Castle as a character. Like he's what every federal law enforcement agent wishes they could be. Like, let's be real. They wish they could go out there and do what Castle does.
Dude, it's oh, go ahead.
Nah, I was just gonna say it's fantastic. Like Frank Castle, like, and you never have to change Frank Castle's origin story. Like, really, it's always the same. It doesn't need to be different. I'm sure there have been cases where they're like, let's try something else. But like, did you watch the Punisher movies?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Did you see the one with Dolph Lundgren in it?
That was actually the one I didn't watch.
Okay.
That was the first one.
But you watched Warzone.
I did. Yes.
Okay. The Dolph Lundgren's better than Warzone, but not as good as the Thomas Jane. So
interesting. Okay.
In my personal opinion.
Okay. Thomas Jane was the first one I remember seeing, and then Warzone shortly after that. Warzone was cool because they introduced like microchip. They introduced that element of having the guy in the behind the computer.
Yeah.
And they also introduced Punisher being this 6'5" monstrous kind of intimidating being who legitimately, like, I think I remember at the end of the film, Punisher's walking away and like off screen, there's a guy who like steals a purse or something, and Punisher just kills him. Like it's not like, he punches him and he takes the purse back and he gives it to he just kills him, like, so it really portrayed like just how no nonsense Frank Castle is and how just brutal. If you guys want, there's anyone in chat or whoever's rewatching this later, if you guys want a great depiction of what the Punisher is or could be, Nick Rekieta from Rekieta Law has a live stream where he talks about Just Some Guy, and it was more recent, I think this past week, and he delves into why the Punisher is so like why so many people love that character. And like you said, Corey, it's what a lot of people wish that they could do.
Yep.
Because you see injustices, like you see, and we won't get too much into it, but you see people who commit heinous crimes that get a couple months, a slap on the wrist, and they're out. And Punisher is what we all wish we could do, which is like, get that guy out of here, because we don't want that person in our society.
Yeah.
And I think that's why he's so appealing to a more masculine audience, I guess you could say.
He's a bit of a toxic male, but
you could absolutely say, very, very toxic masculinity for sure. But one of the first ones I read. And so, it was when I was first buying them, to go back to your question, it was definitely 25 cents to $1. And then
and now the average price is about $4 to $5 a book, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Average is 4 to 5. If you want to get like a variant cover or a nicer, because what DC will offer is they'll offer the standard issue, which is just regular paper, and then they'll offer like a card stock, which is a nicer, like glossier, harder type paper, but that's like $6. You know what I mean? So it's just like it's difficult to determine which books you want to actually buy, because you don't want a weekly allowance of $100 each week. And back in the day, I'm sure what's going on, brother? Good to see you. Back in the day, I'm sure people would buy like $100 in books in the 90s would get you, a stack. That would be insane. But now it gets you maybe a couple variant covers and the standard titles from DC and Marvel. So it's I don't know if that's just inflation or whatnot, but we're definitely seeing the effects of what happens when comics don't have a lot of money being funded into it. Because now they're pricing their books at higher and higher prices, but not giving the reader the talent that their price point is marked up at, I guess I'll say. So
Ah, Christian. An old joke, but I will say it. A lady asks a dude why grown men read comic books. The dude replies politely, the same reason you wear makeup. It's a nice break from reality.
Now it's filters.
Yeah, right,
It doesn't even need to be makeup. You just grab one of these bad boys and get a nice filter on there.
right.
Look like a completely different person.
Yep. Yep. Watch out for those traps, boys. And then
Yeah,
like, holy
yeah,
shit.
they're out there. That's for sure.
Indeed.
So,
So, what's up?
I was
No,
I was
go
going
ahead.
to ask you something because
Mhm.
with all the characters that we've talked about, is there anyone? I know you said Green Lantern is your favorite, but is there anyone that intrigues you the most? Like from a perspective of, because I know you delve into psychology
A
and
little bit.
mental health and stuff. Yeah. And on our last live stream, last Monday over with Comics Division, you just dropped the mic and talked about a lot of like mental health and psychology issues. And so, is there any character that speaks to you in that regard of like someone who's so interesting or dynamic that you feel that is like a very well written or interesting character? And I know, like you said, you haven't. You're more of a normie,
Yeah.
but is there anyone that you can think of off the top of your head?
Not right off the top of my head. If I had to choose a character who's intriguing with, because I actually did a psychological study for a little bit on like Batman and his villains,
Oh, that's
but
cool.
the one that's always intrigued me because of the lack of consistency for backstories and stuff like that would be the Joker.
Mhm.
Because it's very rare to find a functioning psychopath and a functioning psychotic who, while they are detached from reality, still has a firm grip on what is terrifying in reality. And, the various things that he like, the Joker himself is a master of psychological principles. If you look at the character as a whole, he just has this dark side to him that, he very easily could have been a fantastic individual. He could have been a hero, but, like there's always these little mysterious parts of his past that you go, how in the world did he become that twisted? The Dark Knight Joker, for instance, when he was like making up the stories about his scars, there's no way to prove that any of that is true, but then you look at it and you go, it kind of makes sense. But then you watch his behavior and you go, there's no way he had a father like that, or maybe his dad, like maybe his mom's the one that was twisted and his dad got him twisted on it. Like, there's a lot of questions that go into the Joker. And the more questions that I am faced with the character, the more intrigued I am with them. Like, Superman's fairly easy. you know, he was raised by a proper family to have proper values, and he values life over anything else. Like,
Mhm.
that's easy. You can see where that comes from. It's the whole Spider-Man thing of great power comes great responsibility. The Joker and the villains become much more intriguing to me because they show the darker twists on where you can go with, because you have a lot of villains in these that are very similar to the heroes, both in background, abilities, thought processes, but they have that one dark twist that
Mhm.
pushes them over the edge. And like Red Hood or stuff like that, where they're willing to push a little further than their mentors. And it's all about, like the Joker says, that one bad day.
Yeah.
And like that one bad day is what gets me intrigued in most of the villains' backstories. And you never fucking know what that is with the Joker. You never know what, like, I have yet to watch the Joker with Joaquin Phoenix. I bought it months ago,
Oh,
um,
okay.
but I've always been hesitant about Joker backstories because they might, like, twist something that I already have in my brain.
That's fair. Yeah, absolutely. Um, man, that is such a great, uh, such a great conversation starter and such a great discussion because it really is so ambiguous that the big line there is just one bad day is what can create a hero or a villain.
Yep.
I love that you brought up Red Hood. He's one of my absolute favorite like Bat family characters because he is essentially he's kind of like a young Punisher, if you will, if
Hmm.
Punisher was in the DC universe,
Yeah.
because uh he's the one who will go the extra mile. He's the one
Yep.
who will take the life.
Yeah. He'll
Because
cross the line because he thinks that's the
yes,
correct thing to do.
yeah. And he's
And
been, like you said, how he was raised though
hmm
was with a good mentor, as Batman, and yet all it took was one bad day from the Joker, and
now,
taking
granted,
his
that
life.
was a hell of a bad day,
Yeah,
but
that was a life-ending bad day.
yeah,
And that day made him who he was. And so, yeah, these are great characters who have so much depth to them that sometimes they can be underused. I would argue Joker is overused a bit.
yes, he
And
is these days
yeah,
for sure.
and I think that is almost to the detriment because it leaves out a lot of the mystery and a lot of the intrigue.
Hmm.
So, yeah, I would like to see because then, like, if we only got, especially, did you see the new Batman film?
Not yet. It
Okay,
just dropped on HBO Max, so I was gonna
that's right.
watch that this week sometime. So
Okay, there is a deleted scene, I believe, that includes the Joker.
yeah, I saw the
Um,
face.
Yeah, so like it didn't need to be put in the film, nor did I even think that it needed a deleted scene. Why they would even bring the Joker into this new Batman universe in the first place is just
Yeah.
beyond me. And that's another example of you use that character so much to where it's either expected or
Hmm.
it's overutilized to the extent to where people just roll their eyes and they go, "Oh, this again."
Yeah.
So, Joker should really be one of those characters that when you see him, you fear him because you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Well, I felt that like because I haven't watched the movie yet, but I felt like the Joker was more used in this movie as like a look at the possibilities kind of thing, and
yeah,
it was kind of like okay, my understanding of the Joker, like my favorite understanding of the Joker, there's a lot of different ways that he shows up in the Batman universe, but my favorite is like Batman's been established and the Joker shows up because of Batman kind of feeling,
mhm,
like the Joker wants to show that he's not incorruptible, that he's an average person that can be broken, and that all comes from Batman existing and the Joker showing up. And when you do like a young Batman kind of movie and then the Joker's just kind of there, I feel like it takes some of the actual like value out of having the Joker in the first place
yeah,
because there's a reason he shows up, and it's not just because, you know. And
absolutely.
I hate that they're ruining the way he looks too, because the beauty of the Joker, even back to the animated series, was that the only reason he looked weird is because he dressed like a clown.
Mhm,
He looked like a clown. That's why he was weird. If it's chemical burns, if it's chemical reaction, like with Jack Nicholson's Joker, or a mysterious thing with Heath Ledger's Joker on why he looks that way, it's still you know just part of the character. He dresses like a clown. He's crazy. He might be scarred up and stuff, but like I never liked the ones where like he cuts his face off and then like has it re-sewed back on, or like where he's disfigured beyond recognizable features and stuff like that. And it's like Leto's Joker was
like
too much for me.
gangster Joker,
Yeah,
whatever
like
that was.
I can appreciate the gangster Joker if you frame him in the right universe, but
Yeah,
Leto's not the Joker. He can't be, in my opinion. He had potential, but it's Jared Leto. He did the worst rendition of Batman, and from what I hear, Morbius was garbage. So, like, quit
Y-
casting this man.
yeah, yeah. They're trying to definitely make him something that I don't know if he is or not. Um, Brightest Day had said that Batman was 5 out of 10 at best. Brightest Day, after seeing Northman, absolutely, Batman doesn't even hold a candle to Northman. And I won't go into any spoilers because I know Corey, you haven't seen either one, but don't let me sway you. I want you to have a wholly organic experience of both Batman and Northman. But yeah, the other thing that he brought up, which is interesting, is um, Nick said that every director wants their take on Joker, and it's so selfish. You
Yeah.
know, like, dude, if there was a director who came out with a different Batman villain, because he has countless. I mean, you have ones that no one even knows about, um, and they did a rendition on that. I mean, they would be the next best thing since sliced bread. So Joker definitely gets overused and abused a
Yeah.
lot. And I think Brightest Day had said he should be, at least, the antithesis to Batman. So the
Yep.
only reason for his existence, and like you were saying, Corey, is because Batman exists.
Yep.
Joker should never even be a thing until Batman has had like a good 5 years out in the field
Yep.
of crime fighting.
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
fighting the Riddler. He fights Mr. Freeze, fights all of these guys to show that he's incorruptible and that he can lock
Mhm.
up anybody, no matter how terrible it is. And then he shows up to just, like test that theory. Now I got
Yeah.
to address something from the chat here. JT says, I would make a great
Ooh.
Joker or a Mad Hatter. Admission time. The Joker has been one of the characters that I've dreamed of playing for a long time. But I run into the problem of whoever plays the Joker typically winds up very broken. I've heard that, and I've experienced that developing a Joker laugh is incredibly painful. You have to put yourself into a very dark place and laugh through it. I would love to be the Joker, but I need a good therapist first. As far as the Mad Hatter goes, that would be fun as hell. As long as it's more like an American McGee's Alice in Wonderland, where it's a little darker, like let Warner Brothers make Alice in Wonderland in their dark ass universe, and I'd play the Mad Hatter. I'd be okay with that.
There you go. I can see that.
So, what do you think of DC's like constant dwelling in the dark areas? Like, do you think they should lighten their stories up a little bit?
If they want to, oh man, that's a tough question, man. I don't really know what the answer for DC is at this moment. Because yeah, they've definitely gone the route of darker, grittier, more like just heavier. And I don't know if that is going to work out for them in the long run. Um, because most of their characters are like centered around these bright, hopeful ideas. You have your Superman, Batman, Superman, Green Lantern, Wonder Woman, all based in hope, and like happiness and compassion and willpower. Like these are characters that are bright lights to society. At least they should be. But they kind of took Batman and they just said, "Hey, everyone loves Batman, so let's just put this overarching like darkness on every character and make every character Batman." And it does a disservice to the other characters who need to be a light in the darkness. So that's why I think a lot of fans have left the film have left films saying like, "Man, I'm just depressed right now," or like, I don't even know, like it's just so like I couldn't even see some of the things because it was so dark.
Yeah.
If the darkness is used sparingly, it's like we were talking about Joker. It's much heavier. There are good portrayals of what darkness can look like and how it can be used to portray fear or angst or whatever. And when used properly, it can be great in a film. But when it is the core of what DC is trying to do, you lose the essence of what DC is, which is superheroes that are greater than life, that are hopeful and bright lights to society. So if they went that route, I think we'd get honestly a larger audience for that, because people need it right now. So.
Yeah, for sure. Well, ladies and gentlemen, our hour is up, as they like to say in the counseling world. So I guess we're going to call it now. If you need a lighter take on a lot of the DC stuff, just go watch Smallville. It's fantastic. I'm rewatching that right now. I love Smallville.
Nice. Good
Despite
call, yeah.
the child trafficking Chloe and all that stuff. I love it. I also loved the fact that when they had their anniversary recently and they're like, let's meet up. Tom Welling was all like, I don't think she's going to be there. So, but anyway, and with that, Picture Channel.
Yeah, of course. You guys can find me at MVP Maxfield Von Priestley. It's just my full name. My last two videos have been about the Northman. I've been obsessed with it. And tonight at 6 p.m. Pacific, you guys can come watch me live on my live show called Max's Man Cave. And tonight we're just going to be gushing over how great Northman was. So if you guys want to talk about it or hear more of my thoughts, come hang out in the chat and come say hi. So yeah, it's great to see everyone in the chat. And it's great to, yes, that's true, man. I haven't been on such a long time. So my Fridays have been taken up, but it's always a pleasure to see everyone, and great to see Corey on here as well. And for chat, if you guys didn't know, Corey and I don't know if we actually met in Vegas. I think we did briefly. Yes. Yeah, very briefly. And so yeah, I actually met one of the few people on YouTube that I met in person before I met on YouTube. So cool little story there. But yeah, man.
Yeah.
Toxic Man Flu.
Yeah.
6 p.m. Pacific tonight.
He never pays attention to the time. He's still convinced that Thursday Night Throwdown starts at 9 p.m. So.
Oh. Yeah, I know it kind of conflicts with yelling at parked cars a bit, so I apologize. I think you guys go on at 7 p.m. Pacific.
We go
or no
9 p.m. Central. So yeah, 7 Pacific. But definitely make sure you come by Comics Division's channel tonight for Yelling at Parked Cars. Catch his stuff for sure. And as always, stay sexy and don't get murdered. Hi! If you enjoyed this content and would like to see more of it and more like it, then donate to the Ko-Fi link in the description. Thank you.